Hey guys, this is a Patreon Q&A. If you would like to be in next week's video, simply check out the link in the description. You can sign up there. To everyone else listening, there's going to be spoilers for all of the series that I'm going to be talking about. So Myriad and Ferdz pretty much had like the same kind of question, which ultimately boils down to who is Garou going to fight next in the manga. Ferdz more so asking if it could be Orochi because, Garou lost to him previously, and if Garou were to defeat him now, then in theory he would become the new Monster King, since that was Orochi's previous title. So this is like a super popular question in the community right now, and it's understandable because the manga is kind of all over the place, and we kind of know that Garou has to become awakened at some point, and in the webcomic continuity, it was like a fight that led him to that awakening. Being pushed enough to be able to awaken that level of power necessary. And like I always say, the manga's continuity is constantly changing. In fact, with like every new chapter, it seems. So it's possible that maybe that doesn't even happen, and Garou awakens some other way, or he doesn't even awaken anymore. Now, don't worry, I'm not saying that's like a likelihood, but it is a possibility at this point, right? But another possibility, I suppose, is Orochi coming back yet again. But it kind of just seems unnecessary at this point, because if he were to come back, he could have just came back when Sage Centipede came back, right? Because he was literally born from where Orochi was killed. So it would just really seem clunky, in my opinion, for this to happen the way that it would. Would it be cool? Sure, why not? Big Orochi comes back, Garou fights him, and then awakens that way. I mean, sure, a lot of people would be upset by it, and I also think there would probably be an equal amount of people who would just be like, oh, that's cool. So, perfectly balanced as all things should be. But again, just unnecessary. Also, I've talked about this many times before as well, but Orochi will eventually come back later on in the story, like much later on, because Drive Knight has his cells. And Drive Knight being Horus, who in this story is like the main disciple of God aside from Psychos, aka Isis, he will for sure resurrect Orochi in like a cyborgy-esque state, as per what the organization does. And I'm assuming that that version of Orochi will eventually go to the altar possibly and resurrect God, if not all of the cubes come together at that point. And I'm going to make another video talking about the cubes yet again. So that's another reason why it would kind of be unnecessary, because he is eventually going to come back anyway. And maybe Garou fights him at that point. But as of right now, maybe it is Saitama that pushes him that far. And I talked about this last week as well, but he's kind of like the only opponent left at this point, aside from the other S-Class heroes. I mean, it's been implied that Fubuki has healed Tank Top Master, but maybe it's possible that she healed the other S-Class heroes who were injured as well, maybe even Tatsumaki. I don't think they're all back to 100% because Pig God didn't have that much fat stored in him, or maybe he did. We don't really know how the rules work at this point. So I guess that's another option. Maybe they all got healed enough and they all are collectively able to fight Garou enough to push him to becoming awakened, inadvertently accepting the influence of God possibly. And then that's when Saitama steps in. And like I also said, Psychos is still out there, but I don't think she's going to fight Garou, although she could. But if we go back to chapter 92, the chapter where Garou did lose to Orochi initially, Psychos, speaking through Giro, says that she will eventually make Garou like the successor to Orochi essentially. So maybe that comes full circle possibly. Maybe she has something to directly do with Garou awakening. Hopefully, if we do get a new chapter this upcoming week, this will be where we get more insight into where things are headed at this point. Little Ferrari asks, I gotta hear your thoughts on the Batman. I just saw it and I loved it. So yes, I did see it, Little Ferrari, and I thought it was fantastic. So I personally think it's like equal in quality to The Dark Knight, which I think is the best Batman movie aside from this one. Although it's way more grounded than The Dark Knight, and I remember at the time I thought The Dark Knight was super grounded and a very realistic take on Batman, but this is even more so than that. I mean, I won't say it's like the most realistic possible take on Batman, because you can't really do that in a movie because of the cynicism of our own reality, but I was pleasantly surprised by how good this was. I mean, it's 3 hours long, but it's never really boring, and it constantly moves, and everything just connects very nicely. And it's just this really cohesive, dark crime thriller. I thought everybody was great in it. You know, Robert Pattinson was great. Colin Farrell was amazing. And of course, Riddler was great too. He was more so of like a realistic take on what a Batman villain would be for sure. And I thought this was probably the best representation of Gotham that there ever has been. So overall, I just really enjoyed this movie. And if you're on like the fence about watching this, I think you should just go ahead and check it out because it was great. Majin Boros asks, what will be the major significant fights in season 3 of One Punch Man if it is 12 or 24 episode seasons? So we don't know anything about season 3 yet, of course, or even if it's going to be a thing. But in my opinion, no chance we get a 24 episode season. We'll be lucky if we even get 12 episodes. But the major significant fights that I can just think of off the top of my head are for sure going to be Flashy Flash versus Hellfire and Gale. Then we have the redone version of Child Emperor versus Phoenix Man. And then we have Zombie Man versus Pure Blood, which, you know, might be nerfed depending on how far they want to take that one. But the highlight will most likely be Saitama versus Orochi at the end. However, they decide to do the new adaptation of the redraw from 115. Nathan W. asks, now that we know about the Sun and Moon swords, do you think that man of the ninjas will have it and bring it into the story? So that's a good guess for sure, but I don't think he's going to be the one to have it. I think his story will more or less stay the same, and he'll have like all of the weapons and items that he had originally. And then that's how Sonic and Flashy Flash will get their power-ups. But as for who has the Moon Sword, I fully expect it to be like a evil samurai out there who became a disciple of God, similar to how the ninja leader became a disciple. Not confirmed, of course, but I've already talked about this many times. I think it's very, very likely that that is what's going on with him. So as where the ninja leader made a deal with the cube, pretty sure there was like a samurai out there who made a similar deal, and he led to like the lineage of evil samurais. That could also be what Harakiri represents, how there was like always this league of samurais and then one of them gave over to the influence of God, but he still exists to this day because the ninja leader is like, I don't know, did it say he was like over 400 years old or something because he can like keep taking in blood or whatever the deal was with him. I'm assuming that this evil samurai has the same thing going on, but he just has the moon blade, and he will ultimately be Atomic Samurai's like final opponent. First Wolf asks, now that we are seeing Yonko fall in One Piece, are you concerned at all about the seriousness of future threats the Straw Hats will face? Admirals are considered weaker than Yonko, and I don't foresee Shanks being an enemy. So it's not like objectively stated in the story that admirals are weaker than Yonko. This is more sentiments that come from like certain communities. But the future threats of the series are for sure going to present the Straw Hats with issues, because it's not like Luffy is like just dominating Kaido. I mean, he hasn't even really defeated him yet. But also there's so many variables that go into Kaido losing here. Some plot armor, of course, but also he's fought like 1,000 people. He's been holding up Onigashima with his fruit power, and it took 2 of the strongest supernovas aside from Luffy and Blackbeard with their awakenings and some plot armor on their side to take down Big Mom, who ultimately didn't even die. Yes, I'm pretty sure she's still going to live. Now, Shanks being an enemy in the future is really debatable because Luffy did say on Punk Hazard that he did want to fight Shanks or something like that he's going to take down all of the Yonko. So it is possible that he fights him, but I think that Blackbeard's going to kill him. And then aside from that, just Emu herself is going to be like the strongest of the strong for sure. Even though that's like the very last opponent for Luffy, there's still other super powerful characters out there for the other Straw Hats to fight. I mean, don't forget Mihawk versus Zoro is still going to be a thing, hopefully. L asks, your One Punch Man theory videos have been a lot of fun to watch recently. Can we see your A Beautiful Mind wall room? So thank you, L. I really appreciate that. And I don't have a Beautiful Mind wall room. Kind of just have talking points, and then I just try my best to keep it in my head because that's how things work best for me. Natedawg asks, which My Hero fights are you most hyped to get animated besides the obvious ones? What are like the obvious ones? Like Dabi versus Shoto, which was, you know, fine. But I guess this could be considered an obvious one, but it's just the one that I'm most excited for. I just want to see like the latter portion of Shigaraki versus the initial hero team, when it was like Manuel, Aizawa, Izuku, Bakugo, and Endeavor. That was like the highlight of the war to me. I just loved how Horikoshi did that fight. Sean H asks, what do you think would be the perfect My Hero movie plot? So selfishly, I would like to see All Might in his prime, and then the movie eventually ends with him defeating All for One. But the majority of the fandom doesn't want to see that and doesn't care about that. They just want to see Izuku, Bakugo, and Shoto do stuff. So thinking about it from a marketing standpoint, I think a really cool movie would be like all of the schools around the world coming together for like this Olympic style like sports festival or something, where it's not just UA, but like I said, it's all of the schools. And then, you know, whatever happens, and there's some kind of foil where, like, you know, villains infiltrated and they all have to team up. But something like that I think would be really cool for a movie. That's pretty much it for the video today, guys. I want to thank all of my patrons for continuing to support me. And like I said, if you would like to be in next week's, check out the link in the description. You can sign up there. And if you liked the video, please give it a like. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.